Okay, welcome everyone. This is the September edition of the Accessibility Meetup. And today, Michael from Big Blue Doors very kindly offered to share his approaches to accessibility testing. And there'll be space as well for questions, that kind of thing. And if any of you want to share your own approaches or just piggyback on it, that would be awesome. We can screen share and do all those things. And then at the end, we've got some time for questions on other accessibility topics, if there are any. So without further ado, hello, Michael. Thanks.
That's all right. Yeah, first of all, well, thanks for inviting me to do this. It has been a little bit, a lot of work in the last week, so hopefully this isn't too slapdash, is what I was going to politely dance around. I thought what I'd essentially do is just talk about the tools we use for accessibility checks within Big Blue Door, and I'll also screen share so you can see sort of my rough end-to-end process when I'm doing it. So let me try screen sharing now. Hopefully you can all see a brightly coloured website.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Great. So where do I begin? Accessibility. Okay. So given the nature of this call is the community sharing accessibility testing, I won't go into any background of what accessibility testing is. But certainly within Big Blue Door, we sort of generally are hired to do it to a AA standard. We're often working on council and government web pages. We build them and maintain them. So obviously you have to reach that standard. To do it, I mainly use three tools: Axe, Lighthouse, and Wave. Now, I'm sure a lot of you will already use Silktide. We do use that here, but what happens is that happens later in the process. I'll explain that shortly. Just to begin, what I'll do is I'm going to load up a terrible local news website for Brighton, which is called the Argus. I say terrible because I'm going to do some accessibility testing to show you a bad site for it. It's a perfectly fine news source. This, I should stress, this isn't Drupal, this site, and it's not an LGD site, so it's not perfect for an example of bad sites for us, but it's just to give an overall impression of not a great designed site for accessibility. So the first tool I use is Wave, which is a Chrome extension. So I'm just going to click that on here. Can everyone see the little box on the left with the errors?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens is I run Wave on this site. This is the news site Argus. Under errors, there are 17. Under contrast errors, there's 1. Under alerts, there's 16 findings. Under features, there's 106. Structural elements, there's 223. And ARIA labels, there are 77. Now, out of all those 6 things, we only really focus on 2, which is errors and contrast errors. I will look at alerts in case there's anything important that comes up, but for the most part, it's errors and contrast errors, the actual problems that need fixing. So the first thing with Wave open is I click on details, which will break down everything that's wrong on the page that Wave has picked up. I will scroll down to get rid of features, get rid of structural elements, get rid of ARIAs, so that all I'm left with is the errors, the contrast errors, and the alerts. Then I would just one by one go through every single one of these things on screen to see why is it a problem and write them up in a ticket. So I just have to do that slightly. The other thing to say with Wave is if you ever find you're clicking on things around the screen and it's not clear what it's pointing towards, like some of these it's showing when I click on it, it's flashing, so it's there, or that one was there. But there are some where you can't always tell where it is on the screen. What you can do is open this little code box at the bottom. Whenever you click on an element, it will tell you roughly what it is, and you can kind of use detective work to work out what something is. It might say Facebook logo, and you'll know that's the problem. So there you go, footer. There's a problem in the footer, which will be this. So yeah, essentially, I won't run through all of these because we'll be here all day, but there are 5 missing alternative text labels. So there'll be at least 5 things. If you're using a screen reader, it would struggle to acknowledge for the user what it is that is on screen at that time. So for example, that IPSO regulated, just flashed a second ago, there's one of these. Yeah. That's missing alternative text. So if someone tabbed to it, it won't say IPSO regulated footer or a button or whatever it is. It will just say item, which doesn't help anyone with a visual impairment. Similarly, missing form label, it might be a sign up for our newsletter or something like that, but if it's missing the form label, users won't know what they're clicking onto. Empty link, empty button, as you can tell, those just means there are labels missing to explain them to users. Contrast error, obviously that's just when something doesn't look good on the screen for anyone who might be colorblind or something like that. Just click on that. Let's see. According to the code, that's the close button, which probably means it's hidden in the menu, or it could be a different one. But either way, it's a problem and it needs acknowledging. So that's a bad site anyway. That would be using Wave tool. I will just quickly run through the other tools as well, which I have. To get to Axe or Lighthouse, they're in Google Chrome as well, under the developer tools. So I would open up with Inspect, I do Elements, and if I run Axe DevTools, full page scan, I will just run through everything. Basically what Axe does is the same thing as Wave, but it's another tool, and sometimes one will pick up something the other won't. Sometimes they'll both pick up the same thing. So you basically have to sort of work out for yourself if they're discussing the same issues, and then obviously in a ticket you don't need to acknowledge them once. So it is a little bit of retreading the same ground, but it is the best way to be thorough, I find, is to use different tools on the same sites. Again, there's only picked up one missing ARIA label here, whereas I think there was however many there were on Wave. Buttons must have discernible text. There are 2 here. I think there were 4 in Wave a second ago. Images must have alternative text. You can expand these, click on highlight, and then it will show you where it is. So that's the same example I was looking at a minute ago with the Wave tool. Take that off. Links must have discernible text. Do that. Yeah, and it's showing me that's the actual login button at the top there. Yeah, so essentially that's Axe. It's like I say, it's the same thing as Wave to some extent, but you're just trying to catch everything you can between them. Alternatively, you can run Lighthouse. Lighthouse will run on mobile or desktop. It will run the results on mobile or desktop. I do this on mobile because the last 2 tools have been to generate the issues on desktop. So you open Lighthouse, you analyze page load. This will take a minute because it has to run through everything on the page, and there's a lot of adverts on the Argus. But essentially, it will give just a similar thing. Once again, you can see the results. You can cross-reference them and compare them with Axe and Wave. You might see things you hadn't noticed before. You might find they're covering exactly the same things, and you don't need to write up anything new. It's a little time-consuming using 3 tools, but it's just a good way of being thorough, essentially. While this is running, I'll also just mention Silktide. Silktide does get run in Big Blue Door. I don't personally use it. What happens is I run through these 3 to try and catch every little issue I can during accessibility testing. Then further down the line, the lead devs or the lead PMs might use it just to check for an overall score. And if the overall score is good, then it gets passed to the client. Alternatively, the client themselves might run Silktide and come back to us with feedback. And then obviously we can go back and correct any problems that might be found. But the idea is to use Silktide as almost the final accessibility check to see if we've ticked off all the little things that we've been able to pick up with other tools. Sorry, I wasn't expecting this to take this long. Just checking the messages. Yes, sorry, I did have to, just to explain to Maria in the chat, I did have to move, I had to angle my screen down so you can't see my face, because when I've got it like this, I can't see my monitor. It's just the setup of my home desk.
Okay,
I probably should have said that at the start.
No, I wasn't sure if it had just fallen down. Okay.
No, I thought I'd show you all my T-shirt, my Vans T-shirt, to show that I'm still cool and hip. I'm not just old and work in tech, I promise. Right. So the Argus is now run on Lighthouse, and as you can see, the accessibility score is 69, which is pretty awful. It should be in the 90s at least, really. So once again, you can go on performance, and it will tell you total blocking time, how long it took, speed index, things like that. Those aren't technically accessibility, but they're good to know. Within accessibility, much like with Lighthouse and Wave, you've got all these clickable things which are telling you the problem. So ARIA label with elements missing there. Role dialog does not have accessible name. Buttons do not have accessible name. You can do all that and it will zoom you in. Yeah, so again, sorry, I know I'm repeating myself, but it's the same concept as Wave and Axe in that it's picking out individual elements on the screen for you, and then you can use all three tools to sort of try and catch everything you can to write them up in tickets. But because this was set on mobile, it might pick up things you wouldn't necessarily pick up with the other tools. That's why it's good to use Lighthouse as well. Lighthouse, Axe, and Wave are all free Chrome extensions, so you should be able to find them in the Google Store. Right, so that's a terrible site. We'll get off that now. I'll show you an actual good one, which does use Drupal and is an LGD site. This is Surrey Heath Borough Council. So I say that very confidently because it's a big Blue Door client. Let's try running the tools and hopefully it will get good scores on this. Okay, so on Wave, 0 errors, 0 contrast errors, 2 alerts. Suspicious alternative text, long alternative text. Those are very minor things to be flagged up, so I wouldn't be worried about those. Let's get rid of Wave. Let's try Axe and then Lighthouse. So inspect. Zero found with Axe, so that's very nice. Let's try Lighthouse to see what it would be like on mobile. Hopefully go a lot quicker than the Argus one. You can also see on the screen it does reformat to present the mobile displays, which does help when you're trying to log tickets and you need images. Okay, that's almost done. Right, accessibility 100, so that's perfect. Now, all of these tools, as wonderful as it is that I've just had 3 perfect scores for this site, which my company maintains, this is only the landing page. This is only the front page. What we actually need to do when we're accessibility testing is check sort of one of everything. So if I log in the back end.
I was literally typing that question, Michael. So I'm going to delete that question.
Oh, please do. Yes, so now I'm logged in. If I go into content, I'm sure many of you have already seen this, but may do it in your daily jobs, I don't know, but just to show you. Content type, these are all the different sort of pages you can have within it, all the different nodes. What I would do is I would find one of every single one, so one directory channel, for example, that is published. So you wouldn't use that top one because that's unpublished. I would use perhaps this park screen spaces and play areas. And I would copy that and paste it somewhere, that URL. So let me just, that's not the URL, is it? Let's open that. And the reason I would do this, what I would do, I personally just have a notepad and I put one of every content type in it. And then I would do the same with all of them, but just for event, for example, find one that's published, relay or music festival. The reason you do that is when it comes to testing everything, you can't really be logged in as a user in the back end with this, because if I tried to run Wave, in fact, let's open a page. If I try to run these tools, they will pick up everything in the Drupal toolbar. So they will pick up everything here and all here, and you might have all kinds of other things open for editing reasons. So now I've got 2 contrast errors on this page, this Real Ale Music Festival page. If I try logging out, they may still show up, but it may be just because I was logged in as an admin. So let's go. That's the wrong page. Where have you gone? This is one of those things where I said you have to copy all of these, and then I didn't copy that one. Right, so that had 2 errors when I ran Wave. Now we're going to try it again when I'm not logged in. So I'm just a normal anonymous user. 0 contrast errors. That's why you should really be only using pages that any regular person would see rather than someone who's logged in the back end. So I won't, obviously you haven't done it to high level right now, but I would normally copy, like I say, one of every single content type that is published and run it through as an anonymous user, first on Wave, then on the other ones I've already mentioned, which is Axe and Lighthouse. Yeah, 0 on Lighthouse. Sorry, 0 on Axe, I meant. And then eventually, once you've done every content type, it would get sent off. Like I say, maybe someone higher up in the company would run it on Silktide, maybe the clients would. So accessibility of 99, so it has found one thing. It's an ARIA label missing. Okay, that, I know what that is. There is a map here. You can see on the image there that it's the map. Because we don't build the map, I think that's a Google map, possibly. Oh, no, it's Leaflet, which is a different provider. But either way, it's not something we control. So you can't really add the ARIA labels ourselves onto that. So it's not something we can fix, unfortunately, but it is 99 out of 100. It's still a perfectly acceptable score. So that's just how we would check every content. That's how I would know in the back end where every content type, one of each was to find it, was to looking for an admin, looking as an admin and copying the URLs down. I would also just look at obvious ones, like there might be contact pages. Yes, I would run the tools on this. There might be a web form somewhere. I don't think this actual page exists, but I'll check. No. If I was the login screen, I would do it there. I would do cookies, accessibility screen. There's a nice irony in making sure that that's all correct. But essentially, I would be checking one of every content type, the main landing pages, any obvious click off parts like help or a search results screen, the cookies page, accessibility, just sort of the main pages which don't necessarily come up as nodes when you're signed in as an admin, but are all important to the running of a site and the things users are going to come across. And the other thing that I have to do with all the tools, and this is by far the most time consuming, just log in. So I created a service page earlier and published it, so I'd be able to check it as an anonymous user for later. The other thing we do is we add one of every single para that you can make into a page to make sure that when we're running the accessibility tools, they will work on every para type. Now, if I go into add or select, these are all the different paras. So I would have to put one of every single one of these in a test page, then check it on the front end with the 3 tools already discussed. I haven't done that completely today. What I've done is I've created this test page for us. As you can see, I've only done, 10 of the paras, just because that took a little bit of time as it was, and I didn't want to spend hours creating a test page. But here we go. So this is what they look like. Now, this is already a known error that has white text in some of these boxes, and it needs to be black, obviously, for an accessibility pass. So that needs to be captured up, but we need to see what else might be wrong with this page. So just imagine this had all, whatever it is, 45 paras on it, and it's published. Once again, same thing. So no errors found, which is great. There are 5 contrast errors within Wave. Yeah, and it's the ones I already know about, which we've already raised a ticket about. So actually, that's a pretty good sign that out of all the paras I could add, the 10 that were available, nothing else is having problems on Wave. It's just the one thing we'd already picked up on and is already in development. Once again, run the other tools on it. 0 errors found on Axe. I won't run it on Lighthouse because I think you get the idea if I'm running through it for the 4th time. But yes, essentially that means I can just check all the content types and all the paras, which is going to cover 99% of the site. And that's why I do the other landing pages or cookie pages or things like that, just to make sure those are okay. Then once I've done those, the other thing I would run is I would run this through Browser Stack, so I can try it on different devices rather than just emulations. So hopefully I'm logged in still. I don't know if anyone uses Browser Stack, but it's just a way of you can remotely connect to existing devices. There's a paid version and a free version. This is paid, but free works perfectly fine. So let's just say I wanted to check it on iPhone 15 with Safari. Wait for it to load. Hopefully it will say connected to a real device. Yes, you are testing on a real device, not a simulation.
And so would you test every single device on their list?
No, I wouldn't test every device. That's a really good question. What I would do is I've got like a set list of ones which cover most screen sizes and also cover different operating systems. So I would do roughly an iPhone 12, an
Let me write
iPhone
it down.
6.
Sorry,
Yep.
iPhone 12.
Yep. An iPhone. So just to explain as well, the iPhone 12 is recent, but it's a couple of years old. So it's not cutting edge and it's not outdated. That's why I do that one.
Yeah.
iPhone 6, which is, or 6, 7, or 8, all the same screen size, and they're all around the same iOS. So those are slightly older, might still be in use, but they're not going to be massively popular ones.
Yeah.
So I do that. I would use, let me go back to list. Basically, they're all favorited, the sort of ones I use.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Then on Android, I do Galaxy S20, which again is just, it's like the equivalent of iPhone 12. It's modern, but it's not cutting edge, but it's Android, so I can use that. I do a tablet, a Galaxy Tab S8. Again, it's a slightly older one, but it gives you a good idea of what real world users might be using. And for an iPad, I tend to use the iPad 8th or 9th generation.
Thank you.
That's all right. But between that, it just means I've basically done one tablet on iOS and one tablet on Android, one mobile on iOS and one mobile on Android. That's the idea of it. And if the client wants particular ones used, I can do. So I'm just reading the comments as I'm answering.
Do you want to take some questions, Michael?
Shall I just
give you some questions while you're, yeah. So there's a couple of questions from Hannah about like the tools. So is Browser Stack free? And then I think there was another one, which version of Wave do you use? Is it like, are you using the free one or is it a paid version?
Okay, Wave, I'm using the free version. I use Wave, Lighthouse, and Axe, all as free Chrome extensions. Browser Stack is both paid and free. At the moment, we use a paid version just because I use it so much and other people in the company use it. There is a free version, which works absolutely fine. I fully recommend it. They're almost identical. It's just you can only log into one device at a time with one person at a time. Yeah. So if you're the only tester, there's no point paying for Browser Stack. You can just use it. The only reason we've got the paid one is I might be wanting to check something. Someone else in my team might be wanting to check something. It's really just to allow multiple logins at the same time as the paid version.
Thanks, Michael.
That's all right.
Another question, just going back up past the paragraphs question. Oh yeah, Mark was saying be good. He'd actually, maybe we'll come back to this in a minute, but it'd be good to know what the two contrast errors were when you were logged in.
Yep.
Because they sound like they're Drupal or local gov Drupal issues.
Yep.
Create tickets for them.
Yeah, no, it's actually a good point because, of course, at the moment, the majority of the testing is the idea of the user might have some sort of impairment, but there's no reason that someone creating the content be logged in as admin couldn't have some sort of impairment as well. So it's well worth checking. I think that was on the Real Ale one. Yep. So let's go into that. Yeah, two contrasts. Let's check what they are. Let's get rid of all these other things. So, sorry, I've got to do the screen down so I can see the code. So what we've got is trigger visually hidden focusable button. So some sort of button, open configuration options. So that's picking up a button somewhere on the screen.
That's a contextual link button, I'd say. So there's probably a bit of color behind it from something else.
I see. Okay. See, that's why it's good to be on this call because I wouldn't have known that. Someone else can add to it. Let's check the other one. Open housekeeping configuration options. Another button. It could be the same button.
Yeah, that's a menu in the footer. As far as I know, the housekeeping menu.
Oh, okay.
So it's that accessibility, cookies, privacy. So if you see the little pen you get when you hover over that, it's somewhere inside that and on the right hand side.
Yeah, on the right, little pencil icon on the right hand side.
The pencil icon. I'm getting thrown now.
That's cool. I might have to look at that. Yeah. That's just because if that's particular to this site or if it's a local gov Drupal thing that we've introduced ourselves, because we might as well make the back end as accessible as the front end if we can.
Yeah, that's fair. I tell you what, just give me 1 second. I just need to open something in a. Basically, I have permission to share this site. I just need to check something in another LGD site, and then I can let you know if that's the case. But I just want to check that it's okay to share it, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
It's not like a call is being recorded.
Exactly. No one needs to know.
Slide pause. And Mark, you were involved in building the Surrey Heath site originally.
The original site, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite an early one, isn't it?
It was very early. I think that was 2000 and late 2021, I think it was thereabouts.
Sorry, I'm still just checking.
Yeah, just coming back to the question of paragraphs, so the terminology. I find that very confusing, and I've my experience of being on web builds with clients is, you use Drupal language very easily as a developer, and then they're like, what paragraphs? It's confusing because a paragraph does mean something very clearly that everybody understands. And I think that's one of the reasons in local gov Drupal it's called page component. Is it page component?
Yeah, that makes much more sense.
People generally sort of understand that concept. Yeah.
That's something I was going to mention as well. First of all, it took me months to get used to saying paras or paragraphs as well. So no one's alone in that. And I do use components as well. Literally, some sites which are more modern on Drupal, it's listed as components. On the older versions, it's still as paras. So even within our tickets, it might say para stroke component. But, yes. So this is Southwark Council, another LGD one, which I've logged into. Let's try Wave, see if it picks up the same errors.
You're not sharing now, by the way, Michael. You're off.
Oh, okay.
Is that,
well, that might be good actually, because I'm not sure if I've got permission. But I'm running
Right.
Southwark Council LGD.
Okay, we're in radio format now.
Yeah, I have one contrast error showing. I'm just checking out what that is. So it's a little frustrating. I have to keep moving my my laptop screen down to see it. No, this is a different button. This isn't a button. It's a different contrast error. So that previous one seen for Surrey Heath Council, that was particular to that page or perhaps to that site, but it's not being replicated in this other LGD site. So still something that could be picked up and fixed, but it's good that it's not like a global error we're being seen across multiple sites.
Good.
Right. Yes, so that's basically the short of it. Is I would use the 3 free tools of Axe, Wave, and Lighthouse. Someone further down the line in our company or the clients themselves might use Silktide to get an overall report and to pick up things. But like we say, that's kind of done at the end because hopefully we've caught everything by that stage. We would check one of every content type as an anonymous user, and one of every node as a I'm tripping over my own tongue now. Do one of those as an anonymous user, one of every paragraph stroke component as an anonymous user, and lots of other key pages. And then I would run it through Browser Stack to check other devices, and if required, I would also check other browsers on desktop, such as so we use Google as standard, but then I would also use Safari, Firefox, Edge Chromium, things like that. And that would hopefully catch everything, or at least almost everything for each site.
So, sorry, what does Silktide do that Wave, Lighthouse, Axe don't do, or was it particularly good at?
It kind of does the same thing, but as far as I'm aware, it creates one overall report saying you've got these errors. Like there are errors found on the site, but then it doesn't break down the detail of this ARIA label is missing from this page, or this link has no text.
So you then have to go and do some investigation to find those issues. Right.
As far as I'm aware, like I don't really use Silktide, so I might be I don't want to be slandering them. Maybe it's a deeply thorough tool that does have all that. Maybe someone on this call uses it and they can tell me. But it's more that I'm doing lots of picky testing to try and be as precise as possible. And then Silktide is just sort of the overarching review at the end.
And one other question, I guess, for me, looking at that, is there a way of, like in your work, is a way of sort of automating any aspects of those tests, or do you think, from your perspective, like it's best? I can understand that it's probably best done manually, but are there ways to sort of speed up some of it or simplify some of it?
So first of all, I am sorry, I am only a manual tester, so I
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to come up with the automation myself. But I don't think there is in these examples, because obviously the URL extensions are going to be unique to every LGD site for every page that you're checking. And then although you're checking for the same sort of things, such as link text or alternative text or color contrast fails, although you're checking for that, it's going to be in a different place every time. I wouldn't like to say it can't be done, but it's such a, there's such specific checks. I think it would be better to do the manual.
Can I just come in there as well?
Yeah, go for it, Mark.
And I think you're 100% right, Michael. It's best to do them manually because you get the more precise kind of results from real users. But there is with Axe. Actually, I think Axe, Lighthouse, and Wave all use Axe under the hood. So probably best to start with Axe, let's say, and then Lighthouse and Wave, because maybe Wave has a nicer UI on it than Axe has, and Lighthouse, like you said earlier on, does the mobile testing and the desktop versions of it, which is very handy. But there is if you use Axe Core, that's an open source product from the Axe team, so it's available on GitHub, and you can write an integration with that pretty simply. I did a kind of proof of concept at one time. I think it was like 5 or 6 lines of JavaScript, and then you can give it a list of URLs. So it will go and test all those URLs, and it takes like 2 or 3 seconds to test each of them. So you can get a lot of them done. Now, the problem you've got is exactly what you said, Michael, that all our homepages are the same as just / that's our homepage. But my contact page could be /services /contact /something else, and yours could be just /contact and that. But it's pretty quick to get, say, a JSON file or a CSV file or whatever, and give 50 different URLs for each different website that are all individual to that website. And then you can run your npm run start, and it'll go in for each line in that file. It will go and run the Axe tools test against that and give you back a report. Now, the only problem is you get back a report which is just a big blob of text to say, here's all the issues you have. There's no UI on top of that. So when I said there's like 5 lines of code to do that, it was. But you're probably talking another 25,000 lines of code to actually make a nice interface, and that's where using the tools that you're showing now kind of show up. But it's definitely possible to automate those tests, and I guess you could start it. It's basically, I suppose, what SilkType does. It probably uses Axe under hood too, but it has a database somewhere that sends all the data into the database and then gives it back to you in a nice visual. Again, I don't understand SilkType very much like you don't, but probably gives it back in a nice visual manner.
Thanks, Mark. I got Amelie's asked a question. Do you do these checks as you build, like during the build, or is it more at the end of the build?
Yeah, no, so it's a very important question. We wait until near the end, not until the very end, but that's because that's when the content is there. So if I'm going to check one of every content type and one of every para, it's best to do it on existing pages. So it would almost be inaccurate to test early on during the build because there isn't enough real pages. I mean, you can do it. It will still show you, if it will still show you basic functionality. So that's important. But I think it's just better to wait until nearer the end of the project, and then, or if obviously if it's a site we already run and maintain for years at a time, it might just be something every 6 months we retest it. But yes, I would advise waiting until there's a certain amount of the development stages passed. There's enough types of things to check, essentially. I did see one other question I just wanted to answer. I think it was from Johnny regarding keyboard navigation, keyboard testing. That's a really good point, because I did have that in my notes and then I forgot to actually mention it while I was doing the presentation. Yes, I do keyboard navigation. If I share my screen again, check it's the right one. Yeah, hopefully you back on the Real Ale Music Festival. So again, I will do this when I'm not logged in as an admin, just to keep things easier. So I do check keyboard navigation as a part of the testing. Again, it's on all the pages I've mentioned one of each content type and so on. But I don't scrutinize it too much. What the main tests are, I check, do this. Right, can I skip in approximate order going through, which seems to be happening on this page, at least at a glance. Hopefully you can all see the indicator box, the yellow one on everything. It's running through in approximate order of clicking around. And that's the important thing as well. Check there is a skip to main content at the top. That'll either happen the first time you select the tab button or at the very end if you work back through it. So I'm just checking approximately can you navigate, and you know, if I click around again on this one, if I select that, that's this is obviously you can't see, I'm not using my mouse, but you know, can I click on things to expand them or to enter them? Does it go in order? Again, is there is the focus box even there and legible? And is the text on it legible when you're doing this as well? Is important, because there's no point if you if I tabbed onto this and the text turned white with a yellow background, that'd be awful. So you need to make sure that the actual focus indicator is present. Following on from that as well, I would say screen readers get used a lot, but I don't do them as a part of Big Blue Door. I have done them in other companies for years and years. I've done all sorts, JAWS, Narrator, NVDA. They are important, of course, but basically we only use them here if we're asked to use them. If a client says, can you check out our site with a screen reader? Yes, absolutely. But if not, I don't, because the tools should be picking up anything that's missing any labels. So in theory, a screen reader will work with anything that we've already cleared through our testing. And it adds a lot of time on to do screen readers. They're not the most intuitive things I find, at least with all the keyboard shortcuts. Although I do have experience with them and I can do them, because all the tools should be picking everything up in advance. I shouldn't need to, hopefully. Yes, so I do keyboard navigation. It is important, but it's not the same focus to the same level as the tools are, I guess. Also, because I know that it will come up with other people in my company down the line. They also do the keyboard navigation testing.
Fantastic. Does anybody have any other questions or anything they want to share, sort of similar along the lines of accessibility testing and how they do it? There's quite a few other tools that have been mentioned. Site Improve's got a few mentions. I don't know how to pronounce it. Monsido, tomato.
So I can't work out to raise. I can't work out to raise hand on here. I'm on.
Don't worry about it.
I'm on the browser, not the. Zoom's blocked here, so I'm on the browser. I was just wondering if you do any tests externally with groups or anything like that, or did you base it all on your own knowledge and on the tools that you use?
Yeah, another good question. Again, we basically no is the answer. We don't field it out to external teams because we're doing council sites for the most part, or public facing sites. If there's feedback from users directly who require accessibility or have accessibility needs, and they feedback something isn't working, it comes back to us, and then it will get fixed. I mean, I have worked in other companies where we did internal testing and then had an external company we hired and fielded things onto. I mean, in a way, it can be very valuable because people who have these needs are going to be far more thorough at using the tools and knowing what they're looking for, because it's literally how they interact with the sites. But in our case, as I say, it's going to basically come back to the clients and then to us if there's any problems.
Because I think I said in the last accessibility meeting, we noticed some things that were flagging up in the built-in Drupal checker as being inaccessible, but they won't come up in Wave. We got in touch with Sheffield Royal Society for the Blind and said, can we come in and see how you use our websites with your technology? And they did, and it was one part was really interesting to see them use that technology, the speed they have the screen readers set at and things like that, and now they rely on that in combination when being zoomed in. It's not just the screen reader that they're using for that, but also it was reassuring to know that, like everything, like you say, with the things that are built into Drupal to make it work like that. They did all work fine.
Oh, great.
None of them had any issues with kind of like tapping through and using it with their screen readers or anything. So yeah, I think you're probably right in that there is enough built in there to make sure that is all right if we're using these kind of CMSs. But it was still really interesting. There were a few bits that we did learn from doing it.
Well, you actually, Graham, you
But
just mentioned
obviously,
something.
but what's that?
Oh, I was going to say it's quite interesting you mentioned the zoomed in part, because that's something I haven't even touched on. And it's not something I do as a part of the manual testing. But again, that's where things sometimes come back from clients saying, if you're on the page and you zoomed in at 250% and you click on this menu expansion, we can no longer see X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
So it is. It's an important thing and it gets caught. But that's actually a good example where it gets out into the real world. Something feeds back to the client and comes back to us.
Yeah.
That happens.
I mean, I have enlarged text on my phone, and I see things all the time that don't line up properly. It's mainly a cosmetic thing, though. It doesn't stop me from using it. It just means words break and stuff, and it looks stupid. But it shows to me that maybe they haven't checked it.
Yeah.
As well, which isn't a good look.
Like I say, it does happen, and when it does, we fix it. But it's pretty rare. It's a couple of times a year.
Yeah. The thing I was going to say about that as well, that visit that we did, was I was surprised how open and quick to jump on that they were when we got in touch. I had a friend who knew someone there, so I asked him to put me in touch. But straight away they were like, "Yeah, it's our mission to help the people of Sheffield access services properly. So really, really keen to engage with you on this." And we just went in. It was really informal, just with members of staff, not with their clients or anything. So we didn't need a budget for anything, just a couple of hours of everyone's time.
I think because we're our own company who is then working with councils and other services, it would almost be up to the clients if they wanted to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And then we could then we'd feed back to you, wouldn't we? Because we're one of your clients. So.
Maria, did you want to say anything about narrator? Which you said, so you had to pay. So you've been using narrator in Windows. You found that really
Well,
useful.
I
What
say
is
we,
narrator?
but Lizzie's been using it.
What is narrator?
It just reads your screen for you. So
Okay.
she's been using it. She's been doing a campaign to get the council to learn a bit more about writing for accessibility and usability, and she's really brutal because she takes real life examples and then gets in trouble. It's like, listen to this footer in your email. Isn't that horrendous? Let's do it a different way. And then she's got the narrator just going, through, where they, instead of embedding a link, they've got HTTPS, and it reads it out. But before, I know when I don't know, years ago, or not that long ago, you couldn't just, there weren't for these free tools. You had to have a license, or you had to buy it. So it's great. But I have, yeah, it's good. Oh, is that what they were using at Sheffield? Yeah.
Yeah, they all said there was no
Ah,
point in paying. They said that Jaws and
yeah.
can't remember what the other NVIDIA is it? They
Yeah.
said NVDA, that's it.
Yeah.
They tend to be like companies will pay for them and staff will use them.
Yeah.
In work, but people, general individuals, generally
Just the
use
free
narrator or
stuff.
voiceover. They said.
Yeah.
Yeah, in our Ringay, we are also starting to use narrator quite a lot, since we found out that it was already installed in our machines.
Yeah.
Because we also tried, I think NVDA is the free one compared to JAWS that you have to pay for a license. But NVDA, you still need like some software installation, and yeah, it was more complicated. Whereas I just went to the RNBI website, because they have a section where they recommend software and also provide stats around, the most used by users. And yeah, narrator came into the picture and said, oh, so I just typed it into my Windows bar and it appeared. It was
It's
already on my
there.
laptop. So we have entered the, we have started whenever we have a new functionality, or we just want to see if tables are being read out correctly based on the settings that you you input on LGD. If you only want the header row, or you want both, like header row and header column. So just to ensure that the screen reader is reading those things as expected. Another thing that we've been testing quite a lot recently is directories, because those are more dynamic in terms of content. So whenever you have the directories with the map at the top and then the list of results, there are some things that need to happen for those to be accessible. So of course, GovUK is our go-to in terms of standard to follow. And for example, little things like having, the number of results read out loud on a directory, because people need to know whether there's, on page you have maybe 10 results per page, but a screen reader user won't know that unless it's there somewhere read out loud to them. So, there's a lot given for granted by us sighted users. But yeah, sometimes I just cover my eyes. It can be as simple as that, because you're always going to be biased as a tester because you can't see things. But sometimes I just do that, just cover my eyes and see what the experience is. My personal, because I tend to be the person in my team, I'm a content designer and it's a bunch of 5 of us, but I tend to be the accessibility checker in the group more than others. And so one thing is that sometimes you don't know what to expect from each screen reader because they all work differently and I only use one. But there's a lot of guidance online by Microsoft, like how to use narrator. So there's shortcuts that are very handy to go through the page, go back, because what I personally found difficult at the beginning, like I know how to go ahead, but what if I want to go back? So I learned those little shortcuts like Shift Tab that lets you go back. And that's also true for manual navigation. Keyboard navigation. So if you don't use your mouse, you can just go ahead and back and see if all the areas on your page can be operable. But narrator is proving to be quite good in our experience, and it's also picking up in terms of popularity among users. I think the last WebAIM report, I think every year WebAIM ran a survey of the most popular browsers and technology, and narrator is picking up year by year. So,
Giada, you've segued really nicely to a question that Johnny had. He posted a link to somewhere on the Lambeth site. Johnny, did you want to just say, because I think you posted this question in Slack. What was your question related to this? So this is a directory of libraries.
This is a directory of libraries, and what we have is that listing of all of the libraries. And so we've got Brixton Tate Library, a little bit of text and an image. But what we've got are 2 links. The heading Brixton Tate Library is a link, and also the image is a link. So if you test this with Wave, you should discover that it says errors because you've got adjacent links go to the same place. Now, cards are notoriously difficult to build, and the gurus that I follow around accessibility, do all sorts of bits and pieces around, how do you do it? And I just wondered what I have no idea how old this site is in terms of LGD. I have no idea if things have improved. Why can't we click the whole card? Why isn't there one link? Do we want users to be able to select text from that? Probably not a useful thing to do, but sometimes cards, you want people to be able to do that. So there's all sorts of stuff around that, and I just wondered where we are as LGD with cards and accessibility.
Cool. So what's like the most accessible card? Like how would you make this? Is this accessible, or is there a better way of doing this? What do people think?
This isn't. I know in terms of like exactly what Johnny says, we've got 2 links side by side that both go to the exact same place.
Okay, so if I click on Brixton Tate Library, I go there. If I click on the image, I also go there. So the classic thing of making the image a link.
Yeah.
So and the trouble comes up then that, okay, let's just make one of them a link, so then it's fixed. But a lot of people expect to be able to click on an image and go to where that card brings you, and they expect to be able to click on the title, or they expect to be able to click on the whole thing.
The whole card, yeah.
If they can click on the whole card, then it's hard to select text. So you might want to select a postcode, let's say, that's inside that little teaser.
Yeah,
But you
I want to get
the whole card is clickable. There's a link I popped in there to the chat from the inclusivecomponents.design website, which goes through all these things and what makes this so difficult, and has some nice little snippets of how we can make the whole card clickable and make the text selectable and things like that. And I think this is probably something we should get around to fixing or improving, let's say, in local gov Drupal, that we do have a little bit more accessible than they currently are. I mean, they're not.
I mean, I've tried using this.
You got two links side by side. Sorry, Johnny.
No, I've tried using the advice here, and you go around in circles because it's a long article, and what Hayden does is he says, right, let's fix this, right, but this bit doesn't work now, so let's fix that as well, and now we've broken that first bit, so now we have, so it goes around the whole thing, and it's for developers to be able to learn and understand, and that's fantastic.
The general approach that we have, Johnny, with local gov Drupal is make the hard things easy. So
yeah, no, absolutely.
So if someone creates an issue for this, I'll get that fixed in a generic manner. So for this to work, then for all the other cards, you just add a class called inclusive card in your CSS for
exactly.
that, and don't do anything else. I'll have everything figured out in the back end, and that will fix it for every website across local gov Drupal. You know, and that's kind of the that's how we want local gov Drupal to work. That we do the hard things, so you can focus on the content.
Yeah.
Can I just
so what is the answer before we what's the answer? We didn't actually answer the question.
Tell him what to do.
What's the solution? All right.
The solution is to use pseudo classes or JavaScript. You choose.
Okay. But I mean, for the user, what's the upshot? Are we making the whole thing a link, or are you just? Is the idea to make the whole card?
I mean, that's the question, isn't it? And if the question is there a one size fits all for local gov Drupal? And the answer is probably not.
It does sound like if you can make the whole card clickable but still be able to copy the text, if that's possible to have it like that, as that's the kind of default, that sounds like the best option.
I mean, that is possible because Adrian has done it. But then there's the whole without having to. It can be.
I'm gonna have to go. I've got another meeting. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. All right. Cheers, Nova.
Cheers.
Bye bye.
Cheers, Nova.
I think as well, just before people get too worried about, does this mean, or I think Maria mentioned there, does that mean our directors are not accessible? It's not that they're not accessible. You can still read the page fully, and a screen reader can still read the page fully. It's that there's more links that need to be on the page. So somebody that's blind and is using a screen reader, and it says, click here to read about Brixton Tate Library, and then they tab, and the next thing says, click here to read about Brixton Tate Library, and then click here to read about Carnegie Library, click here to read about Carnegie Library, because so they only need to have that link there once.
Yeah, sorry, I phrased that
wrong. It's too
wrong.
accessible, let's say.
I phrased it wrong. I think because we always check we do an automatic report in Site Improve that will flag if, say, on a page we have a different wording that goes to the same link, and we'll then fix that. But I just that's not come up. So that was just not something that was on my radar or tool. So it's good for us to go and
there's another good example
that.
here. See Tots time at Birch Hill Library, and the next one's different. I thought it was the same, but you might have a repeating event with the exact same title. And you don't want to read out Tots time at Birch Hill Library, Tots time at Birch Hill Library, Tots time at Birch Hill Library.
That's
true. So for screen readers, we wanted to say something like Tots time at Birch Hill Library, 3rd 9th 2024. And Tots time at Birch Hill Library, 4th 9th 2024. So that we know what date we're on. So visual user will see the exact.
Oh my gosh, have you found another thing wrong on that?
No, that's not here. But I know that has.
No, you're right.
As a thing we want to look at.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we also have that because it's a reoccurring event. Yeah,
exactly.
The same link will be stuck upon the other. Yeah, and read out loud different times. Just quickly, aware of time, but it's interesting when you say that users expect to be able to click on an image. Because I've read otherwise that that's like a common like thing that we may think people expect, but it's actually not really proved in practice. So one solution could be that the image is not clickable and only the heading taking you to that page is a link, and that's I think a clean fix. Because for example, here you have images, but they're not clickable, are they, on the events? So you will only have the one link, the title as a link. I think this is a nice one. But yeah, it's 3 already.
But for me, the problem with that link is that you can't see that it's a link.
Yeah,
because
here
it's
we
not
have
underlined.
a separate, yeah.
So
it's a Pandora box, isn't it?
If it was a card with the drop shadows, say, then that maybe gives it more of a feel of being a card. And so but then you think the whole thing is clickable.
Yeah, on this one, definitely the link misses the underline style in the, I think the one we were looking at before, the directory one, had the correct like linking slide.
It did have an underline, yeah.
Yeah, this is how it should be. And yeah.
So that's the problem, Mark, is that once you start changing the design, you then start having different affordances to say, oh, do we want that to the whole thing to be clickable, or just the heading, or what?
Yeah,
I'm just here sticking my poker in. I'm sorry.
Yeah, in Haringey we don't have the image. So in directories we only have the map as an image, and then just the link taking it to that directory venue. That's all.
I guess, Johnny, as well, if it's something as simple as a CSS class, then if you don't want the whole thing to be like, we fix it that way, that we have this thing in the background. If you add the CSS class called whole card clickable or whatever it is, if you add that, it comes that. And if you don't want that, just remove that. So individual councils can have what they want, but we've solved the harder problem. And because we solve it in a generic manner for everybody, if there's ever an issue with it, we can fix it once and everybody gets to fix, rather than everyone doing something that's better 95% the same as each other, but that 5% then costs a fortune when you multiply it across 300 or 400 councils having to do the same.
No, absolutely, yeah. No, I'm totally for generics, absolutely. Yeah.
Right, folks.
Cool.
Is coming up to, well, it's actually past time to finish, and people are busy. I just want to say, first of all, thanks to Michael for a really great show and tell. Thanks so much for doing that, and doing the prep as well, because I know it does take a bit of prep. So thank you so much. It was fairly short notice as well.
I hope it wasn't too dry for everyone just saying, use these tools and check these pages. But that's somewhat what the task is, you know.
Exactly what the task is, yeah. I think that's.
I had one more very quick question actually on that. How often would you do that on a site then? Do you have like would you go back and do it once a year or something? Or?
Yeah, it's not a set rota from my perspective. It's when a ticket comes through from one of my project managers saying this needs accessibility testing, which certainly every time we upgrade between Drupal versions, it would need doing.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think it's really up to the PMs rather than me. I would say maybe once a year.
Okay.
But yeah, once a year plus whenever Drupal gets upgraded.
Thanks.
Okay, folks. I haven't got any suggestions for topics for next time. So if you do have any ideas just during the month, drop them in Slack. If you've got any ideas of things that you want to maybe share with people. Could be a project that you've worked on. Graham, like if you want to get in touch about the stuff you've done microsites, I know you've mentioned that. That'd be really interesting. And anybody else. And otherwise, we'll be back this time next month. Next week, we've got the content group meetup, which will be an open session this month. So just come along if you've got questions. We'll have a bit of a talking shop on various topics. But thanks again, Michael, for your talk. That was fantastic. And I'll see you all at a meetup soon. Have a pleasant onward journey.
Thanks.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.